got to introduce my dear friend Ben Hunt. We've been through thick and thin together, Ben and I. We've been doing stuff together for quite a long time now, and I've been honoured to be a collaborator on a couple of books that Ben's done, because, you know, if Carlsberg did writers, that would be Ben. He's amazing. And God knows how many 500 videos or something we've done together. And it's a real honour to have him here today. So, my friend Ben Hunt.
All right, hi everyone. If you're sat at the back, feel free to press forward. Also, can you hear me all right? Is that better? Speak into the microphone. Also, we've got a mic here on the table here. As a break from convention, we're not necessarily going to do like a Q&A at the end of this rant, but do feel free to come up and grab the mic and interrupt me. Are there any militant vegans in the audience, by the way? That's all right. Thanks, Nick. Okay. So yeah, please do. If you've got a question, you know, raise your hand, whatever, or we'll get the mic to you. So, you know, this is going to be a conversation. We're all friends. So, what I'm going to be talking about. My name's Ben Hunt, and I'm a misfit. Okay. I've described myself as a food philosopher. I've been an entrepreneur and various different things. Diet coach, web designer, lots of bushcraft instructor, didgeridoo maker, chess teacher, etc. You get the idea. I can't concentrate on one thing for very long. So thank you for coming to my TED Talk. That's it. So what I'm going to be talking about today is the theme of carnivory and how humans are carnivores. And before you get up and walk out thinking I've heard this crap before, I'm not going to be talking about the health stuff, right? I'm going to be talking about everything else. Because the fact that humans are carnivores, we're more than biological carnivores, okay? Now, I came into the meat-based way of life through an unusual route, which was vegetables, actually. That 11 years ago, my ex and I took on renting a large house with 2 acres of garden, and I had youngish kids at the time, who are now grown up, but I thought it would be a great idea to get into growing my own, right? It just always felt like something that was good and natural and reconnected you to the earth. And so I took to clearing bits of this jungle that we had in the garden, and I dug over this bit of land, pulled out every little stone and every little weed and root, and got it to a lovely tilth, as we say in the gardening community. And there's an old fella, Colin, about 90 years old, who's my neighbour from the cottage down the bottom, and he came and looked. He was leaning over the fence, and he said, "That's not no dig, is it?" And I thought, what do you mean by no dig? And I'd never heard of this. So I went off exploring the Back to Eden method and Charles Dowding and stuff like that, and I got really, really into soil. And I was bewitched by this idea, because like everybody, every other sensible thinking person knew that carbon dioxide is clearly a pollutant and very bad for the planet, okay? And I had this genius idea. Wouldn't it be a great idea to suck all of that nasty carbon out of the air if we could by building soil? Because surely soil has got a lot of carbon in it, and if we could find a way to make more soil more quickly, then that could pull all the evil carbon out of the air. I've since done a complete 180 on the carbon problem, which we can talk about. Okay. So I got into the idea of no-dig gardening, regenerative agriculture, and I started going to conferences. Can I take this off? That's better. Yeah, I started going to conferences and seminars and stuff like that by the Sustainable Food Trust and the Oxford Real Farming Conference and whatever. And as part of that, I started hearing some strange new ideas. And one of those strange new ideas was that ruminant animals in particular, and animal life, is very important for the ecosystem and important for the soil, and how cows can actually accelerate the building of soil. And I'd never heard of that before. And also people started saying, I started hearing things about the importance of ruminant meat for human health as well. And people were talking about things like DHA and EPA and CLA, conjugated linoleic acid and stuff like that. And I thought, but this doesn't make sense, because like everybody else, I knew for a fact that fruits and vegetables were good for us and we ought to limit the amount of meat and especially fat that we ate, right? So I went off and I thought, because I'm a curious person, I'm interested in everything out there. This is ringing a little bit, yeah. I'm curious. And I came across this bugger's Facebook group and that was it. And then, hello, welcome to your next rabbit hole. And that was it. So, you know, before too long we were running courses together and coaching people on the importance of meat. You know, I did a 180. I was a vegan at one point for just under, I think, 48 hours. I was a vegan for in Sydney, Australia. I was off my tits with jet lag. That's my excuse. And I thought, oh, and I read the CD insert for Moby's Play CD, where he said why everyone should be a vegan, and being completely off my head, I thought, that sounds like a great idea. Until I went past the smoothie stall and realised I couldn't have, you know, proper ice cream or proper, I thought, what time is it in the morning? 5 past. Fuck that, I thought to myself. We're not, you know, going to mess around with that. Anyway, so that's how I got into all of this. Now, there's plenty of people talking about why meat is good for you, right? Shall we do just quickly a show of hands for all of those who identifies as a full carnivore right now? Okay, good, smattering. Anyone like not quite keto, paleo-ish? No? Yeah, a few more. Okay, and omnivores, eat what you want, a little bit of everything does you good. Yeah. Any vegetarians? Just the one? Thank you, welcome. You're honoured. And yeah, any vegans? Good. That's all right. Okay, so there's going to be a lot of people talking about why, you know, as biological carnivores, why meat is good for you. So we'll quickly run over that. So the argument for the plant-based lifestyle really has 3 legs: health, environment, and ethics. Okay, it happens to be wrong on all counts. Okay, and that's all provable. I've got different presentations that I will do on, you know, the carbon thing, the climate change thing, etc. And the ethics is a whole nother area. Okay, but what I'm going to be focusing on more in this discussion is the aspects of what it means to be a carnivorous animal and how it affects us emotionally, societally, even spiritually, right? But we'll quickly cover the health thing, right? So, depending on which design method you subscribe to, were we put here by a deity, random selection, or aliens, I don't really care, because our design is our design. We are the way that we are. And I think, you know, Rich is going to be talking later about the Australopithecines, about 3.5 to 4 million years ago, as understood by science. That the Earth was going through some ice ages, which means when you have an ice age, it locks up a lot of fresh water, okay, in these massive ice flows, the ice sheets particularly in the northern Europe and stuff. And what that means is that there's less water going around the system, and what that means is that the tropics tend to dry out. So about 50 million years ago, a new whole type of plant appeared on Earth, which was much more resilient to drought, which were called the grasses. Okay, about 50 to 60 million years ago. So if the dinosaurs disappeared about 65 million years, so dinosaurs, by the way, never saw grass. Right? Dinosaurs were browsers, so they ate leaves of things, they didn't graze. Okay, grazing hadn't been invented until the grasses came along. So the grasses came along, and the grasses were more resilient to drought because they're very, very clever, and they grow from the bottom upwards. They don't grow from the tip, okay? And they can also drop their roots. So if there isn't enough water going around, the grasses can kind of shrink down again, which a tree can't do. Right? The bigger a tree gets, the more water it needs every year. Okay, it's a bit like a politician. They can't shrink back down. Okay, so where was I going with this? The tropics dried out. Okay, so with the tropics dried out, so that means that the trees, because trees are very water hungry, the forests, the big rainforests started to recede, and the savanna, which is the African grasslands, expanded, and there was groups of little short, hairy, pot-bellied family members of ours called the Australopithecus, which means southern ape. And the idea is that they started to go out onto the plains to find new sources of food because the forests were diminishing. And because they had ape-like hands, like we do, right? These can do something which not many other creatures can do, which is hold things. So they picked up rocks and they were able to smash into the large bones and the skull cavities of carcasses that had been left by large predators, and they were able to get to the very fatty contents within, okay, i.e. bone marrow and brain matter. And that then was a highly nutrient-dense and energy-dense form of nutrition, which let them eat less, right? Because we'll talk about this quite a lot more. Herbivores, plant-eating animals, they're surrounded by their food. If you imagine you're a sheep, obviously no one in here is actually... Have we got any sheep in... No. Sheep and gorillas and orangutans and whatever, surrounded by their food. Rabbits, right? Surrounded by food. But the food is very poor quality because it's plants, okay? And so they eat all day long. They eat and they crap, and they eat and they crap. And every now and again something exciting happens, which is generally two categories. There's a mating opportunity or something tries to eat you and you have to run away. Other than that, it's back to the normal routine of eating, chewing, in some cases regurgitating and chewing again, swallowing again, crapping, you know, you get the picture. It's a very mundane existence. And this is important. But the Australopithecines didn't need to do that because they got this incredible fatty stuff that's full of all the vitamins that their bodies needed, and all the fatty acids, all the amino acids, and lots of energy in the form of fat. And so they didn't need to eat all the time, every day. And they grew big brains. And they grew big brains. Now, there's a catch to having a giant brain, because brains are very, very energy hungry. They burn a lot, they need a lot of energy. The other thing that burns a lot of energy in your body is your intestines. The digestion of food is also very energy intensive. And it's not actually possible to have a giant brain and a giant gut at the same time. If you look at the skeleton of a gorilla, the skeleton of a gorilla has a huge pelvis, okay? And their rib cage is shaped like that. Their rib cage, like every other primate, like every other monkey and ape, they're triangular, right? Whereas ours are square, yeah? Our ribs go like that, their ribs go like that. And the reason is because they have this enormous belly on them, okay? And the reason they've got an enormous belly on them is because they eat plants, okay? And this is a good thing. This is perfect. There's nothing wrong in nature. Let's just get that out of the way. Nature doesn't make mistakes. She takes a long time to do things, but what nature does, it tends to be beautiful, intricate, balanced, self-leveling, right? Called homeostasis, you know? Nature doesn't make mistakes. We do, right? Human beings come along and think, oh, I can improve on that, and we generally cock it up when we do. Almost invariably cock it up. There's some amazing things that we do, right? But nature is very, very effective. So, what was I talking about? Gorillas. So gorillas got this triangular rib cage for this giant belly. And they've got to have the giant belly because their intestines, they're what's known as hindgut digesters. So the digestion, a lot of it happens after the stomach. And they've got trillions and trillions of bacteria in there. And the bacteria's job is to digest cellulose. Right? And now you've got another type, which is the ruminants. And they've been around for 50 odd million years. Okay? Coincidentally, but with the grasses when they emerge. And they are foregut digesters, which means they've got these extra stomach compartments, a rumen and whatever, pre-stomach, but the end result is more or less the same. Huge colonies of bacteria, because cellulose is one of the main structural components of all plants, all green things out there, okay? And cellulose is a very complex carbohydrate. So what that means is it's lots and lots of glucose molecules all joined together. Okay, so carbohydrates come in the form of simple sugars, and then you've got monosaccharides, disaccharides, which is two sugars joined together, and then you've got starch, which is lots and lots of glucose joined together, but in a soluble way. And then you've got things like cellulose, which is much stronger bonds between the glucose molecules, okay? But cellulose is just glucose, right? Lots of glucoses joined together. And we can't really digest cellulose. No animal in the animal kingdom can digest cellulose. The only things that can digest cellulose are fungi and bacteria, right? Maybe archaea as well, which are kind of bacteria. Okay, they are the only things that can break the bond. So that's why cows. Do you know cows are on a high-fat diet? Right? Cows don't digest grass. Cows ingest grass. Okay, which goes into the room and it's chewed up a couple of times. What digests the grass is the bacteria in the cow's digestive system. Right? The bacteria then break apart the cellulose into glucose. They eat the glucose and they excrete short-chain fatty acids. The cow gets its energy from short-chain fatty acids. Okay? That's where it gets its energy from. And where does it get its protein from? Because there's almost no protein in grass. It gets its protein from the dead bodies of the bacteria. So it digests the dead bacteria, and that's how it builds beef and liver and all of these other things. But we can't do that. Okay. One of the byproducts of microbial fermentation is methane, as we all know, which again is going to choke the world, which we can get onto as well. In fact, while we're on the subject, we know that the world has always had large numbers of ruminants. In the last 50 million years, they started out as little forest-dwelling ruminants. So ruminants mean that they've got the room and they're foregut digesters. Apparently, when the white fella came to North America, people reported like sitting on a rock and watching herds of bison go by, and the bison blotted out all the visible land from here to the horizon. And the herd took 3 days to pass. 3 whole days, right? The earth has always supported as many large grazing animals as it could, right? So I guarantee you there are not more cows today in North America or horses and stuff than there ever were. Okay, the earth has always supported as many as it could. And just by the smell test, I'm a big fan of common sense, right? The earth never choked to death. We know that because we're all still here to talk about it, right? So what are we talking about? Oh yeah, fatty acids. Okay, so nature's perfect. Okay, and so here's how life works. So now we're going to get into the bit of the kind of the philosophy of food and life and death, because all of these things interact. Okay, what is food? Food is life. It's intimately linked to life. So if you think about it, what is the purpose of any living thing? Right? It's to make copies of itself. So genetic replication. So it doesn't matter whether you're a blade of grass, or a human being, or a whale, or a bacteria, or a mosquito. It's the same deal. The species that are successful are the species that have multiplied around the earth. Okay. Now, how do you multiply? Well, what you have to do is you have to make copies of yourself that are smaller than you are, right? Because you can't make a bit of yourself that's bigger than you are because there isn't enough raw material to do it. So you have to make small versions. In our case, we call them babies. In the case of a grass, they make grass seeds and stuff like that. So you have to make a small version. And the small version then has to grow into a big version so that it can reach sexual maturity and reproduce in its own right. Okay, you with me so far? All good? Right? So, how do you do that? How do you grow? Well, to grow, you need energy and building blocks. And the building blocks are nutrients. Okay, so energy can come in really two forms, or three forms. What we call the macronutrients, which are carbohydrates, fats, and protein. Now, human beings are not very efficient at using protein for energy at all. Okay, we're not supposed to use protein for energy. Cats and small carnivores can use protein for energy. Okay, so if you've got a cat, you should be feeding it like a 5% fat diet, right? Because it's good at protein, whereas we'll do much better on like a, you know. So I give my dogs 10% fat from the shop, whereas I'll have 20 or 25% fat. But we'll get onto that. So, what are we talking about now? Cats, fats, that's it. Life, that was the one. Life, the universe. I know it's very early on a Sunday morning to be talking about life, the universe and everything, so I do apologise, but, you know, this is what I've been asked to do. So, in order to grow and reach maturity and to reproduce, you need building blocks and you need energy to do it, and that's what food is, right? If you're a plant, by the way, then food also comes in the form of sunlight. Okay, so nature in her perfection. You get sunlight, which is where all the energy begins that plants gather. They combine it with carbon dioxide and they combine it with nutrients and minerals from the soil, and they make their own bodies so that they can get to this point, make seeds, reproduce, happy days, okay? Now, everything in nature is food, because everything in nature is made of very useful materials, right? Raw materials. Even rocks are food, by the way. That when plants' roots go down into the soil, they can break up the rocks, and there are things that will actually dissolve minerals out of the rocks, get sucked up by the plants to be made into new plant. Now, so what are all these plants? The plants are all there in the business of trying to grow big and to reproduce and make new copies of the plants, because that's how a species survives, right? It's a war zone out there, by the way. All the plants that you see are competing with each other. So everything's competing with members of its own species and with other species as well. Right? This idea that nature's all nice and fluffy and kind is not true. Right? So the plant grows up, it's full of raw materials. Right? So in nature, whenever you get an abundance of something, you'll get something else that tries to take advantage of that abundance. So you get animals that eat plants. So these animals come along like a rabbit and go, that looks nice, I'm going to eat all this grass, and there's grass everywhere. Okay? So the rabbit gets to eating all the grass. And what's it doing? Okay? Goes into its stomach, the bacteria break down the cellulose and whatever, and it gets its protein from the bacteria, and it builds rabbit, okay, to the point where it gets the opportunity to have cuddles with another rabbit, okay. I'm not going to go into detail, but when a mummy rabbit and a daddy rabbit love each other very much, they have a special cuddle and they make baby rabbits, okay. It's too early on a Sunday morning to go into too much detail on that. But they make, hopefully, that's the point of being a rabbit, is to make new rabbits, and rabbits are particularly good at doing that. Okay, I could pick any species. But then you've got a load of rabbits jumping around, hopping around, eating the grass and pooping. Okay. By the way, poop is also food. Everything is food. We are all food. We are all tomorrow's food. Okay, no matter what you are. And even as a carnivore, right? So you've got rabbits running around, and then you're going to get other animals that go, there's a lot of rabbit here, I'm going to help myself to some of that, okay? So then you get carnivores that eat the rabbits, right? And what are they doing? They're just recycling the solar energy that came to the grass, that came into the rabbit, that goes into the fox, or the eagle, or the whatever it is, okay? And then everybody's pooping all the time, some of us more than others, okay? And the poop is new life for the soil. And by the way, soil is a mixture of three things, okay, generally. It's a mixture of minerals, which are inorganic, it's a mixture of living things, and it's a mixture of things that used to be living and are now dead. So soil is largely made up of dead things, dead plants, dead poop, dead animals, right? When I die, I'm going to become new soil. That's why we say ashes to ashes, dust to dust when we bury our dead in this culture. Okay, we are all tomorrow's food. We are all made of food. Everything, every living thing is made of food, and we're all going to be compost one day. And that's a beautiful thing. So that's how nature works. It's all in cycles. It goes round and it goes round and it goes round, and that's how nature does cool things. Right, that's 2 bullet points out of about 25. Okay. So, we are not supposed to eat plants. Right, plants are medicine. We can't get our energy properly from plants. We certainly can't get our nutrition properly from plants. If you saw Rich and Dr. Abs talking yesterday, Rich mentioned in quite a few ways the way that vitamins and minerals and stuff are locked up in plants. There's a lot of bullshit in the world, and I'm not talking about the good kind that makes new soil, okay, and turns into new food. I'm talking about the stuff that comes from humans, right? There's a lot of bullshit in the world, and one of the types of bullshit you'll get is that kale contains this much or whatever, right? Spinach contains this much iron, right? Now, if you break it down and look at how many ions there may be in the spinach, yes, doesn't mean you can use it, because there's also the anti-nutrients and the fact that a lot of that stuff that's technically in the plant is going to stay in the plant all the way through here until it comes out the other end into the toilet. Okay? Because it's locked up in cellulose, and we can't digest cellulose. We can digest some of it, right? And we know that because it turns into farts. But that's about all we know, right? Now, did you know that 70% of all known animal species in the world are carnivorous? Okay? And the reason for that is because eating plants, and like I'm saying, there's nothing wrong with nature, nothing wrong in nature at all. Okay? Eating plants is really, really hard. It's an extremely specialized skill that takes millions of years to perfect. One of the reasons is, as our friend Anthony Chaffee likes to say, that he learned this from cancer studies at a medical school. Plants are trying to kill you, right? When you're a carnivore, which you are, and by the way, all like the subject of I'd love everybody to walk out of here going, I identify as a carnivore now, right? I'm giving you permission to come out as a carnivore. That's the point, okay? As Dr. Chaffee says, plants are trying to kill you. Like I say, it's a bloodbath out there. It's a war zone. Everything is competing, right? And the way that, like, literally, food is the way that you do life. Food is how you do life. Life is about getting the energy and nutrients you need to grow bigger, reproduce, carry on, stay safe. Okay? And that's what food literally is. It's the mechanism of life. It's how life lives. So, when you are a carnivore, okay, and you like rabbits, or you like sheep, or you like giraffes, or whatever, right, or herring, then you go out and you find those things. You have to chase them down and get them, okay? But the other animal can run away, swim away, fly away, burrow, hide, or fight, okay? And all animals have got their own different, let's put it this way, and the species that are around today are the most successful at that. And by the way, all of us here are living examples of one of the most inspiring and successful success stories in the history of life. If you think about it, your parents, one man, one woman, I'm assuming, okay, you can't be too sure, one man, one woman, reached maturity and were able to reproduce successfully. Okay, congratulations, well done to them. Okay, so did your dad's parents and your mum's parents. That's 4 more. All succeeded at life, right? And their parents, that's 8, guaranteed, 8, always, right? And so on and so forth. Millions of human beings before you, all of them won. They won the game of life so that you could be here, So, you know, if I was American, I'd get everyone to stand up and like give ourselves a round of applause, but I'm not. Okay, but well done, right? You are literally sitting here as an example of life's biggest success ever. So, animals can fight, hide, run away, whatever, right? Plants can't do that because they are quite literally rooted to the spot. That's what being a plant means. Yeah, you're getting your energy and your nutrients and everything from one spot, and you don't get to change that unless you're tumbleweed or some kind of thing floating around in the sea. So what can plants do, right? Plants don't want to be eaten any more than animals. You think a rabbit doesn't want to be eaten, that's why it runs away? Plants don't want to be eaten any more than that because plants have got the same job. They've got the same objective as all of life. So have mushrooms and bacteria and fish, everything, right? Nothing wants to be eaten. Everything wants to grow to sexual maturity so that it can reproduce and make new copies of itself. That's why we've got the species that we've got today in the world, because they're the species that have done that and done it well. And the species that haven't done it so well aren't here no more. And there have been way more species that aren't here anymore than there are that are still here. So well done to all of us. You know, all the species that are here in the room today, congratulations. Plants can't run away or whatever. So what do? Some of them will grow thorns and will grow furry, so they're not nice to eat, right? Or hairs and stuff like that, and spines and whatever, the physical defences. But by far the most common defences that plants make are chemical. And they've had millions of years to get good at that. And they're really, really good at it. So they've developed a lot of stuff. Like, I mean, goodness me, well, we've already mentioned things like, you know, lectins, we've got phytates, we've got oxalic acid, we've got cyanogenic glycosides. There was and I'm not going to go into detail, you could talk about this for days, right? There are whole books written on this. 99% of the plants out there in the world will either make you very sick or kill you if you try and eat them, okay? But there are animals that eat plants. Why? Well, it's an abundant food source, so something's going to come along and do it, right? But you and I can't go out there. We can ingest grass, or we can ingest hawthorn leaves and stuff like that, and nettles, right? But we can't live off that. We can't get. It's not food. Food does two things: nourishes you and satisfies you. So it has to provide all the nourishment you need and has to satisfy. Okay, that's my definition of food. Okay, we can eat nettles. And we might be able to get a tiny little bit of iron from nettles, but to me, plants are medicine, not food. Because we can't break down the whatever. So, but yeah, there's all of these poisons and toxins and whatever in the plants. So you get animals who specialize, right? I think cows are specialists in eating mainly grasses, but also a few dozen other small plants as well that they need in order to balance all their minerals, and they actually do that instinctively. You know, cows, every herbivorous animal out there knows what and sometimes it'll go, I really need to eat some of that moss or that little herb or whatever, and it'll go and find it. Or these trees, you know, cows will sometimes nibble on willow trees and whatever because they know instinctively. The only species that has lost the ability to do that is us, right? Every other animal in creation knows how to keep itself healthy by bathing in the sun, eating what it needs, not eating, sometimes fasting is very, very important, very, very healing. We're supposedly the most clever and intelligent species ever to walk the earth. And we don't know how to heal ourselves when every other species can, and we don't know what to eat either, right? The only animal intelligent enough to create its own food and dumb enough to eat it. That's what we are. So, why are we eating so many plants, right? If it's difficult, yeah. If you think like pandas eat almost exclusively bamboo, right? We can't live on bamboo. Koalas eat exclusively eucalyptus leaves, right? You can have a little bit of eucalyptus in tea or whatever, right? But if you eat, you will get very sick if you eat eucalyptus leaves. These are highly, highly specialized things. So these animals have co-evolved with those species of plants to deal with those toxins, right, and excrete them. And then what they do, guess what? They take all the good stuff that they need, the amino acids, the protein, right, the fatty acids and all the minerals, all the good stuff, and they make that into koala meat and koala organs and koala fat, or whatever the species is. So even though it's actually quite challenging to catch other animals to eat, 70% of all known animal species are carnivorous, because it's the safe way to do it, right? There's very few things in the animal kingdom are actually poisonous. There's venomous animals, of course, not much that's actually poisonous, as in toxic to eat, like fugu, you know, the pufferfish and stuff like that will drop dead if you're wrongly prepared. So why do we eat so many plants? Why are we eating so many plants today? Well, it's all to do with climate change, which happened about 12,000 years ago. 14,000 years ago came finally the end of the last ice age, and we've entered now this warm, mild, pleasant interglacial period in which we are. What happened then is that all the megafauna disappeared, whether we overhunted them or because of the Younger Dryas event, this meteor or whatever it was that hit the Earth, no one's quite sure. But what we do know is that our food sources disappeared. There's no more mammoth, there's no more woolly rhinos, there's no more these giant ground sloths and the ancient horses and stuff like that, and the aurochs have disappeared. They're the ancestors of modern cattle. So we needed to adapt to new food sources. Now, because we had come from Australopithecus via Homo erectus, Homo habilis, and so on, we have always retained the ability to get energy from carbohydrates. But we've never in the last several million years been able to get everything that we needed from food. And one of the reasons, I was talking about big brain, big stomach, our guts have shrunk down. Our guts have shrunk down to, I think, the human digestive system is something like 1.5 meters, right? The large intestine. Compare that to a pig is about 7.5 meters. Right, so we've got 1/5 of the intestine of a pig, which is a true omnivore. It's a natural omnivore. Gorillas, massive, absolutely massive. But as a result of that, they can only have small brains. Now, we grew a big brain. You cannot run a big brain and a big gut at the same time. There's just not enough hours in the day to get enough energy into your body to do that. But we've ended up eating a load of plants. And the reason is because our natural prey, you go into any cave and look at the pictures on the wall, right? What are the pictures of? There's no pictures of gardening, ever. It's all hunting scenes. People took that time to gather the materials and to paint what was most important to them, which was their relationship with the prey animals that they hunted. But what we found is that all dwindled. We started having to get our energy from other sources. So while we'd always had the ability to go and dig up a tuber and then chew it and probably spit out the fibre, which you don't need, by the way. Fibre is actually bad for you. Fibre, both insoluble and soluble fibre, are both anti-nutrients. Okay, and insoluble fibre, or roughage, right, is actually an irritant to the gut. So we have this crazy idea that, if I don't have the fibre, I won't be able to poop. I won't go to the toilet. Well, the reason is, I think, because that roughage that we have is an irritant. So your gut actually wants to expel it. When it hits your bowel goes, we don't want that crap in here. Get rid of it as quickly as possible, okay? There is quite a famous study where they took a bunch of people, I can't remember the numbers, with idiopathic constipation, as in they couldn't say where the constipation came from, right? So, and what they did was they took them all off fibre, right? Every single one of them got better. All the symptoms went away. All of them. So the thing that they tell you should have was actually causing the constipation in the first place. Okay? And soluble fibre makes a kind of a gel going through your system, which just prevents the other food that you've eaten from reaching the endothelial cells, and it just prevents digestion. It acts as a barrier. And so you don't need that stuff at all. But we got into this situation where we had to eat, and we came up with the idea that, particularly things like grains, that maybe we'd resorted to some of these survival foods over time, and one of those might have been grass seeds, because they do have some fats in them, they do have some protein in them. But I think it's 70% of the protein in wheat is in the form of gluten. Now, your body can't use gluten, in fact, but it can react to gluten in lots of ways. Okay, but we did this, and then we developed them over thousands of years to have fatter seed heads, and we hybridized and domesticated the fruits to have more sugar because that was nicer to eat. If you see an actual wild banana, they're short, stumpy things with massive seeds in. Like that. You know, the modern banana, which is just mostly sweet starch, is completely different. And so we got into this, and then that food then became wealth. We talk about this in the Red Pill Food Revolution, if anyone's read that, but I'm probably not going to dwell on that one for too much, because I want to get on to talking about some much more interesting stuff. So every species has its place in nature. This is probably one of the biggest things that I want to impress on us, right? I hope we're all kind of getting a picture that everything has its place in the web of life, right? Like we say, the plants gather the sunlight. That's the original source of energy, the sun's energy. It transforms that energy into its own building blocks, starches, which is where it stores its energy and sugars, and cellulose and lignin and stuff like that, which is where it builds its structure. Nature abhors a vacuum. Whenever there are resources, something will come along to make use of those resources and to recycle the energy and to recycle the nutrients that have come up out of the ground and out of the soil, okay? Making that stuff into animal. Other animals will eat those animals, and other animals will sometimes eat those animals, and whenever any animal dies, it's either going to go through the digestive system of something else, or it's going to go into the soil where it becomes food for bacteria, slugs, worms, and all kinds of creepy crawlies and archaea and so on and so forth, and we all become compost again, and the whole system repeats and goes round and round and round. Okay, that's nature, that's the beauty of it. And so, you know, we live in a world that loves pyramids and triangles. So we're told, you probably remember from school, the food web: soil, plants, herbivores, carnivores, you know, apex predators. And we are apex predators in the true sense of the word. If you look at the work of Dr. Mickey Bendor from the University of Tel Aviv, used stable isotope testing on nitrogen and carbon isotopes. Looking back, they can measure, when you take some of the bone or whatever from remains of any living thing, you can measure these specific isotopes that are stable, as in they don't degrade into other things. And what happens is that when you measure the concentration of these isotopes, an animal that eats plants will get certain of these in a certain mix. Okay, and animals that eat those animals, it'll concentrate in the bones and tissues of those animals. And then predators, they'll concentrate even more. So you can actually map, using the nitrogen and the carbon, these specific isotopes, where their food came from. Okay, and humans, it turns out, have been more carnivorous than any other animal and we're talking prehistory, the Paleolithic, the Old Stone Age, right? We're more carnivorous than wolves and lions and stuff. What does that mean? It means that not only did we get almost all of our nutrition from other animals, we probably even ate other predators as well. So we actually probably hunted wolves and tigers and bears, oh my. Crazy. So everything has its place, right? And for me, if I eat a sheep, right, I am not superior to the sheep any more than I am inferior to the bacteria, slugs and snails and worms that are going to eat me when my time is up as well, right? Now, that's human thinking, that's pyramid thinking. That comes from human society. Right? They think that, oh, you go up the pyramid, right? It's like the trickle-down economics. It's all bollocks. So the reality is that it's all a giant web, and every species interacts with countless hundreds of other species. You've got more non-human cells in your body than you have human cells. There are more bacterial cells in your digestive tract than there are human cells in your body. You are not even mostly human. You are a hot, wet bag of microbial mush, and I love you for it. You're beautiful, right? But that's what we are. We've got mites living on our eyebrows that only live on like human eyebrows. It's crazy. There's things crawling on your skin. You have parasites living in your innards that help you to do different things, right? And then everything's kept in. We're a host for fungi, right? Everyone's got candida living in their system. Everyone's got Helicobacter pylori in their stomachs, right? Absolutely, and it's all held in this beautiful balance until something happens and it goes out of balance, and you get a dose of thrush, or you get this, that, or the other, right? We're not even human, guys. We are colonies of thousands of different species of stuff, right? We've barely got a clue what actually happens in our intestines, right? What do they call it? I can't even remember what they call it now. Sunday morning. The gut microbiome, that's the one, right? We've only just figured out how complex the soil is. The soil is unbelievably complex. We're not very good at complex, we like simple things. So everything belongs in nature, okay? And it's in this giant web. But nothing is superior to anything else, right? We are all in the service of life. Life just cycles. It cycles nutrients, it cycles energy, and it all goes back to the soil if you're a land organism, or back into the sea if you're a sea organism. And one way that you can define or identify any living species is, well, what does it eat? Because those are the relationships. How do you describe a koala? Well, you can describe its physicality. Well, how does it live? Well, live means food, because that's what life does. Eats, craps, shags, makes new versions. That's it, right? And food is one of the things that we do every day. So how do you talk about koala without talking about eucalyptus? It's literally essential to what a koala is. You can't talk about, like dolphins, right? How do you talk about dolphins? Well, dolphins eat small fish. And that's what they do. And the other aspect is, well, what does every animal try not to get eaten by? Rabbits eat grass and some forbs and stuff off the ground. They try not to get eaten by foxes and cats and eagles and stuff like that. Okay, that is the web. Those are the links, those neurons that join every species to every other species. And we are all intimately connected, and we're all going to end up being recycled by bacteria and lots of smaller things into new food for new things. And that's perfect, and it's beautiful, and it's the way it is. Now, so I've talked about why we're eating a load more plants. I'm not going to go into the seed oils and the new stuff and the processed food. I'm sure everyone's like, there's plenty of information about that, because we're focusing on the emotional, social and spiritual aspects in this talk today. So we've all got our place. Okay. Now you can let those words actually sink in, because I think one of the problems that so many of us are suffering from today is a feeling that we don't belong. And I maintain that it appears to me that that's kind of deliberate. All right? Human beings have our place in that web of life, and my position is that the evidence says to me, as a former vegetarian and 48-hour vegan, right? It seems to me that our place in that web of life is that we should be, or we are meant to, we are designed to eat large animals and to get our nutrition from that way, right? The meat and the fat of large animals gives you gives your body everything it needs and nothing it doesn't. Nothing. Right? So that's a slam dunk as far as I'm concerned. Right? And you can trace all of our health problems, this metabolic collapse that we are suffering with. Right? I grew up in the 70s. Okay? When I grew up, there was, in every year at school, there was one fat kid. Right? I remember there was, I think, probably one child in my year when I was 8 and 9 that had an inhaler. I remember meeting, when I was 11, the first kid I knew who had chronic eczema, right? Now, and autism, forget about it. I never met anybody with autism in my school years, right? I didn't know what autism was until Rain Man came along. Was that 1989, something like that, right? Never heard of it, never heard the word in my life. Now, how many kids have got autism, ADHD, right? How many kids are obese, okay? We are collapsing metabolically and no one is talking about it. It is the elephant in the room. Now, so the health stuff, right, I'm going to leave that aside because everyone else can talk about that. But I want to talk about our emotional and spiritual place and our emotional and spiritual collapse. Because human beings, we have our design, we have a place in nature, but for some reason we are being led to believe that we don't. So that's what I want to explore in the next kind of half an hour, and still leave room for some questions as well. We are told that we don't belong. We belong in the web of life as carnivores, and that doesn't mean that we are dominant. You know, the animal rights movement has this idea of speciesism being the root of racism and domination of other minorities and whatever, right? And sexism. You know, they say that and this idea came from the 70s. It's very new. The idea that the original sin of discrimination is actually that humans are superior to pigs and cows and chickens and sheep, right? That we think that we have the right to take away the life of these other. It's not about that. Just look around at nature. That is life. It's how life works. Everything eats everything else. And by the way, and I've got loads of videos and stuff on this, by the way, you kill more things when you don't eat animals anyway, right? If you go out into a field, right? How do you make a field? And we've been doing this for 10,000 years, okay? Well, not all over the world. It started like in the Middle East and China about 10,000 years ago. And what was called, by the way, the Fertile Crescent, and it's now Egypt, Syria, Iraq, Israel, Palestine, right? Not places that you think of as green and lush. Why? Because agriculture destroys the soil. But that's a topic for a whole different discussion. Where was I? Middle East. Anyway, to make a field, you kill every species that you don't want. Every species that would compete. Now, you know, like I said, everything in nature is competing against everything else, and the net result is beauty, complexity, multi layers. Right? Farming doesn't like that. If you want farming, you destroy, you rip up, first you start with ripping out the trees, you drag them off and burn them. You rip out all the hedges, right? You slice through the soil, which is and by the way, the soil is like the flesh of the earth, right? But on top of that, it's meant to have a skin. In a forest, that skin is made up, and it's like a blanket that protects the soil from the elements. It protects it from ultraviolet light, protects it from raindrops, it protects it, from whatever, and oxidation. So in a forest or woodland, then that's made up of what we call leaf mold. Right? Leaves fall down, they start to decompose, and it makes a protective blanket. In grassland, then it's similar. It's dead grasses. Whenever you see bare soil in nature, it means nothing's growing. And that's a sign, think about it. When you look at field, they plough the field. What are they doing? They turn over all the soil, right? They kill the fungal networks, the mycorrhizal networks in the soil. They literally slice up anything that they don't want, which can include mice and rats and voles and snakes and frogs, and like we say, the mycorrhizae. They expose the soil to the sunlight and the elements. So what happens to the carbon in the soil? Well, it oxidizes and it floats up into the air to become CO2, which according to some people is a bad thing. Right? It's not a bad thing in the air because it's going to come back down and feed more plants. And by the way, the more CO2 there is, the more plants there are, because the earth is greening right now, so don't worry about that, it's fine. Everything's okay. But we do have a very, very real environmental emergency going on right now, which is farming, because it's destroying the soil. And if you look at the work of David R. Montgomery and a book called Dirt, the Erosion of Civilizations, he shows how looking back at every single major civilization that there has ever been, has blown itself up between 500 and 1,000 years, right? Every time. Ancient Greece, the Babylonians, right? The Mayans, the Incas, every single one, apart from one, right? Every single one disappeared, right? Big civilization grew up, big cities, marvelous stuff, disappeared. Why? Destroyed the soil. Did you know that the Romans used to grow most of their grains and their olives in North Africa? Right, this is going back 2,000 years, ancient Rome, in the area that we now call the Sahara Desert. Right? Farming creates deserts, that's what it does. The carbon, you think that, and we figured this out a while ago, but humans are quite stupid and we don't live for that long, we've got short memories, right? We live to about 100 years or what if we're lucky. Probably should live longer. So what we realised was, actually, if I drag this stick through the soil, right, and then, or I get a cow to drag it through, or a horse or whatever, and I turn over the soil, it appears to make it more fertile. Isn't that great? And it does. This is the thing, it does, in the short term. Because what you're doing is, you expose the soil to the elements, you kill a load of stuff, all the worms and the fungal networks and stuff like that, right? You kill that. Every living thing contains nitrogen. So when you kill stuff, it releases nitrogen. And what do plants want to grow? Nitrogen. Okay? So it appears to make the soil more fertile, but you're losing the carbon at the same time that you're doing it. So after a while, you end up with dirt. There's no carbon left. It can't hold moisture anymore. The soil dies. And you can't grow anything. We can't grow shit anymore, right? If it wasn't for World War II and the armaments factories that we built to create bombs to blow the fuck out of each other, right? That we then recycled because the soil was dying, and then we said, well, what can we do? Well, as everybody knows, that fertilizer is very high in nitrogen, and it can be used to make explosives. Again, a topic for another day. It's not that kind of conference, but. They recycled all of these, so we're now throwing nitrogen-based fertilizer, which originally comes from crude oil. Anyway, we're throwing this onto the soil just to trick the plants into growing, tricking them to think that they're growing in soil, right? Because there's nitrogen. So these plants are growing up, but the plants that we're even growing today have like half of the mineral content and the nutrient content and the vitamin content that they had in the 1950s, right? Even a lot of the meat that is bought today has got less minerals, less nutrients than it did like 3 or so generations ago, right? It's insanity. And no one's talking about it. There's a lot of things that nobody is talking about. The very, very important things that nobody is talking about. And the things that everyone is talking about, right, is all bollocks. It's all the CO2 in the atmosphere is going to kill us. Cow farts are going to kill us, right? We've got to get rid of the cows. And of course, the most important topic of all is why are men being put into the ring with women at the Olympics? Yeah? We're all being distracted from the stuff that actually matters. There's a very, very real, predictable countdown timer going on to the end of this great civilization, and it's going on below our feet, not above our heads, and no bugger is talking about it. Anyway, you've got me onto a different topic now, because we wanted to talk about the spiritual aspect. So we belong in the great web of life. And that is also where we belong in the universe. And this is what I really want to get across. And I think that what we talk about in the Red Pill Food Revolution, that the great atrocity is us being told, you're not carnivores, you're not hunters, You're not hunter-gatherers. You can eat the bugs, right? You can eat kale smoothies. That's better for the planet. Is everyone familiar with the World Economic Forum? Right? Have you seen their short film looking ahead to 2030? Right? It's just I can't remember how it starts, but I remember how it starts. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Right? The communist dream. And I think it's point 4 on that says you will eat much less meat, an occasional treat, not a staple, for your health and for our planet. Okay? This is the programming that we're getting. So we're now being told, and as well, let's just touch on this because it's very, very important. We are being told that it is our fault. And I see this a lot when I speak to vegans and other related mental disorders. This idea of misanthropy, which is the hatred of humanity. We're being told, and our kids are now getting it from the moment that they can understand the spoken word. They're getting it at preschool, right? We are wrong. That they want, whoever they are, they want you to know that you are wrong. They had what was called original sin, which worked really well for a few centuries. Okay, the Catholic Church had original sin from the Garden of Eden, and Eve gave Adam the apple, and blah blah blah. We've got a new one now. This new original sin is that your fault because you're a consumer, right? It's not the fault of the corporations that are strip mining, that are burning the Amazon down and polluting the rivers and all that. No, it's your fault, right? Because you didn't recycle that bottle into the right bin and stuff like that. Right? It's a crazy world that we're living in. But they want to disempower you, and they are disempowering us in every single way that they can. And one of the fundamental ways that they're disempowering us is by making us believe that we don't belong. They're saying to you, you don't belong here, you humans, right? You are the bastard illegitimate offspring of that whore Mother Nature, right? So what we need to do is we need to move into megacities now. Right? I think it was in the last century where more people started living in cities than were living in the countryside, and it's going to be double, probably in my lifetime. So they want us in cities, they want us off the land, they want to disconnect us from everything that makes us human. And I believe, actually, my personal view is that it's because humans are a damn sight more powerful than we are being allowed to acknowledge. I think we have divine power, and they want to disconnect us from all of that. Okay. So this year I started working on an idea called the Way of the Carnivore, which it's focused on, it's not just the health aspects, but actually for us to reclaim, and this is why I'm saying we should all come out as carnivores, right? To reclaim what it means for us to be meat-eating natural hunters. Now, it doesn't mean that you individually have to be a hunter. In our tribes, in the Paleolithic tribes, the old Stone Age tribes, not everybody was a hunter, right? Somebody was a mushroom specialist. Somebody was a teacher of children. Somebody was a tanner. You know, you might specialize in trapping fish. You might specialize in making bows. Whatever it is, we've all got our skills. You might be a medicine woman, a healer, right? We've all got our skills. Some people will be hunters, right? Yeah, some people say to me, "Well, would you go out and kill a cow with your bare hands?" I'm like, probably not. But then I don't do my dentistry either. You know, I don't clean the sewers. They're specialised jobs for specialised people. But they want us to think that we don't belong, and I think we do belong. So the Way of the Carnivore got me thinking about how different the psychology and even the spiritual identity of a carnivore, right? You know, we think, "Oh, what is my spirit animal?" Right? People always think Oh, it's a bear, it's a wolf, it's an eagle, it's a lion, it's a tiger. There's kind of a theme there. Nobody goes rabbit or sheep, do they? My spirit animal is a sheep. I think there's a reason for that. I think we know in our DNA. With a fire going yesterday, and how many people said, "I love staring into a fire"? Yeah, we've been doing it for literally millions of years. Richard Wrangham wrote a book called Catching Fire that says that it was pre-Homo sapiens that we started using fire. Probably Homo erectus, could have been the first to use fire for protection. We could come down from the trees and not have to sleep up in trees, and we started cooking our food. It's in our DNA to do that. I think it's in our DNA to like hunting, to like fishing, to like being outdoors and camping and all that kind of stuff, to like throwing a shrimp on the barbie. It's who we are. So let's just explore just a little bit what it means to be a carnivore, aside from the obvious, as in you eat meat and fat and organs, okay? Aside from that, what does it mean? So like we said at the beginning, the herbivore life is markedly different to the carnivore life. Now, 30% of animal species are herbivores, and that's great, right? And all of these are needed, by the way. And there's a story, go and look it up, Yellowstone National Park in the US, when they reintroduced wolves. They introduced, I think, 10 wolves. It changed the landscape. The river started flowing a different way, because the wolves kept the deer in check, and the deer stopped eating these, and then certain trees started to regrow where they weren't growing before because there were too many deer and stuff like that. Go and look up Oostvaardersplassen in the Netherlands, where this guy decided, I'm going to make a nature reserve, and I'm going to put these wild cattle and feral ponies and stuff in this place, no predators, and they're just going to enjoy life in peace. And what happened? And they ate all the grass, they overbred, they ate all the grass, and they starved to death. And they started having to send in men with guns to shoot the animals so that they didn't overbreed, because there were no bloody predators, and the predators were really important because the predators are part of the web of life. And if you if you mess about with the web of life, it breaks down and you get horrible cascades of disaster, right? The predators are there. I was saying, like, nature keeps everything in balance, right? If there's a good year, there's lots of rains on the savannah, right? So the grass grows really well. So the antelope breed better because they've got more natural resource. They've got more resources, more nutrients, more grass. So they breed like rabbits, and they make more antelope. And because there's more antelope, the lions have more food, right? Now, if the next year it's not a good year for the rains don't come, there's not as much grass, the antelopes die down, the more antelope there are, the more lions there are. If the lions eat too many antelope and the antelope population shrinks, the lion population will shrink. This is homeostasis. This is how nature keeps everything in balance. It's only humans. There's a man who just messes up. We bugger everything up that we try and improve on. Right? So what was talking about? Yeah, you're surrounded by your food as a herbivore, but it's poor quality food. Plant matter is poor quality, right? So you have to eat a lot of it. You have to spend all day eating. Like 20 hours a day or whatever, just chewing. And then with the help of the bacteria, you turn it into your body and stuff like that. Now, something exciting might happen, as we've mentioned. Two things. One thing, you might get a date, but the more likely occurrence is that something comes along and tries to eat you. So it tries to chase you, okay, and you get to run away. Now, that very materially impacts your psychology and your view of the universe. Compare to, pick a predator of your choice, tiger, orca, eagle, right? How is life different for them, right? You're a tiger, okay, in the jungle. Are you surrounded by your food? Well, kind of, but not, like gorillas literally just spend all day going like this, right? Just eat. I'm going to move around over here, eat a bit more, and then they eat their own poo, because the vitamin B12 is generated in the large intestine, but it's also absorbed in the small intestine. So, anyway, we don't do that. So you're surrounded by your food, okay? Now, so the tiger in the jungle is not surrounded. It has to go out into the world to find its food. Yeah? So it's a very different mentality. And it's not scared. The tiger isn't constantly watching its back, right? It knows that the universe is abundant, just as the rabbit knows that the universe is abundant, or the dolphin, or the mackerel, or the whatever, the frog. Okay, we all live in an abundant universe. It's just the way that we relate to the resources is going to be different. Now, if you're a sheep, and we'll stick with sheep because it's got a useful metaphor in this day and age. If you're a sheep, think about also your attitude to work, right? What you do is you turn up every day, right? And by the way, a sheep's definition of success is I made it to another morning without getting ate the day before. That is literally as good as it gets for a sheep. Okay? That's winning as a sheep. Your job is to turn up every day and just chew and chew and chew. Okay? Now, for a tiger, that's different. A tiger is feast and famine. And I could go on about the way that our fat cells and stuff are designed for feast and famine, and why not eating all day, every day is actually really, really healthy, right? Insulin spikes, cortisol, all that kind of stuff. We are not, like Zoe Harcum, I love what Zoe Harcum says. She says, unless you are a cow or you want to be the size of one, stop grazing. Right? 3 meals a day, snacks between meals, and we graze between snacks. Bollocks. Doesn't work. You're going to have your elevated insulin and elevated cortisol, the stress hormone, all day long. It's not good for you. Stop doing it. Right? It's fine to go a day or 2 or 3 or 10 without food, because your body gets to strip down and heal itself and cleanse itself. Anyway, you've got me onto distracted now. So the attitude of a sheep is different. And the attitude to danger, think about it, right? Your tiger or your lions out on the savannah, right? There is danger when you're going to attack this wildebeest, right? Danger both ways. But you have to go out and you have to do it, right? You have to take on the wildebeest, and you're going to try and do it in the best way. If you're a sheep, danger comes, and what do sheep do? What do sheep do when danger comes along? They huddle together into a flock, right? Sardines, massive shoals, right? Starlings, massive flocks of starlings. Why? Why does this work for these animals, these prey animals, to gather together in massive numbers? It works for the benefit of the species, because although it makes it harder for an attacking animal to single out any individual, you get confused, right? That's what works for the species. So, your inclination, your instinct is to stick with the herd. Do not stand out, right? Now, that is, I believe, the way that we are being inculcated, educated to think. We are raised, since particularly the Industrial Revolution, but this started with the invention of agriculture, right, where we had different tiers of society. Some people who owned the land were rich, and we got the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, that those who had got more, and those who didn't suffered more and had to work, because, the way that we always existed on the land was, it was all out there. Whatever I needed, I could go out and get. If I needed food, I'd say, lads, right, hunting party, let's do it. The mammoth are going to be coming by tomorrow. Let's go and hunt. And then just go, yeah, let's do it. It's going to be a bit dangerous, but that's fine. That's how life was. If I needed a spear, I'd go and find the flint and whatever, and I'd learn to nap it. I'd find the sinew that I needed to wrap it on, and the pine pitch and whatever to glue it into the stick. I'd find the right shaft for the stick. Everything that you ever needed, the boots, the materials, the tools, the shelter, the food and the medicine were all out there in nature for the finding. And we know this because human beings flourished on every bit of land on the entire Earth during the last ice age, except for Antarctica. We never made it to Antarctica, but we flourished everywhere, which meant that nature provided all the food, all the materials, and all the medicines we ever needed. Right? That is what human existence is. We live in an abundant universe where everything that we need is there. All we need to do is figure out how to do it and share the skills among our tribe. Right? Don't eat that mushroom, because everything will fall out of your bottom and you'll die, right? Or it'll make you see God for a week, or whatever, right? This is a good mushroom, that's a bad mushroom, right? We teach each other these things. We don't do this anymore. Where do we get our knowledge from these days? We get it from a pyramid. And you're taught from an early age. Your parents are whisked off to the factory to work, right? Yeah, you are shoved into a school where they tell you what to think, not how to think, they tell you what to think. So we're taught that information comes from authority, comes from above. It doesn't come from the tribe, it doesn't come from the circle. I like circles, right? I much prefer the circle to the triangle. But modern society is based on triangles, it's based on authority. It's based on looking to authority for protection. Now, has anyone noticed, like I said, I was a teenager in the 80s, and we've always had something started to happen after World War II, right? Do you remember the Cold War, right? And see if you can spot a pattern here. Cold War, nuclear Armageddon, okay? Now, I don't know if these things exist, right? Nuclear Armageddon could kill us all. Oh no, this is terrible, right? In the 80s, we also had AIDS. Anyone remember AIDS? That was going to kill a lot of people. We had SARS, we had mad cow disease. Oh, acid rain. That was a favourite. Remember acid rain? The hole in the ozone layer, do you remember that one? Yeah? Now, none of these things killed us all yet, okay? And we had all kinds of other pandemics and viruses and stuff that were going to kill everybody, including one that I can't remember what it's called, it just a few years ago. So it slipped my memory. But guess what? None of these killed us all. Right? Just like the cow farts never wiped out life on Earth in the last 50 million years. Okay? So what's the point of all of these things? Well, I think there's a couple of things. One is, they're all invisible. AIDS is invisible. The threat of nuclear holocaust is invisible, right? The other thing that's really significant about these threats is that they don't respect borders. And if you look at the rhetoric of media heroes like Mr. Al Gore and Miss Greta Thunberg, right, who will tell you, and King Charles, right, there's a very common theme in what they say, which is that modern democracies are hopefully inept at keeping us safe from these global threats. Now, we didn't used to have global threats, we used to have threats. You know, the wolves have got into the encampment to grab your spear, right? That's a threat. Adrenaline rush, deal with it, calm down, okay? We don't do that these days. How do we live these days? Well, I would put it to you that we live like sheep. We are told, we live the herbivore existence. We live like factory farmed animals. Right? And what are they farming? They're farming your life force. They're farming 50 years of your life when you turn up 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, you put in the work, you get a fraction of the value of the work that you do because it's the mill owner or whatever that does it, and then they tax you on that money, and then they tax you on anything you try to spend it on later. So they are literally sucking away half a century of your life, and you get a few quid left over that you can go and buy a pint, you know, with your friend or some muesli, okay? That's what I think is happening. So these things are invisible and they don't respect borders, and they say that modern democracies are inept. They're not doing enough. Our governments are not doing enough to protect us and keep us safe. Well, maybe we're not meant to be safe. Maybe the goal of life is not to make it through to the next morning without having been killed by AIDS or nuclear holocaust or the latest virus. You know, maybe we're not meant to think of life in that way. Maybe there's more to be had from life, right? like the tiger. You picture yourself, you're in the jungle, you're a tiger, right? You're hungry, you haven't eaten, they haven't had a kill for 3 days, okay? But what do? You don't sit there and go, I better shrink back into the herd, You go, I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to make something fucking happen. I'm going to go find the food, right? Because that's what I do, I'm a tiger. And I believe that that's what human beings are meant to be. I think that we have powers, and this whole sheep training regime that we've been put through is primarily designed to get us all thinking that, oh no, I can't stand out, I don't want to stand out. I'll just shrink back into line and do what they say. And when they say roll up your sleeve, you roll up your sleeve. When they say wear a mask, you wear a mask, right? When they say eat the bugs, you go, yes, Uncle Klaus, I will eat the bugs, So to me, the identity of being a hunter-gatherer, of being an apex predator, which we always were, right, it means far more than matching your diet to your digestive system and to your physiological needs. It's far more important than that. It tells you you belong in the universe. You belong here. I'm sick of being told that I don't belong. Aren't you? So I think I've said everything I wanted to say, but we've got 10 minutes. I think everyone's still awake as well, so I count that as a result. Yeah. But yeah. Any thoughts, please? I know we've covered an awful lot of stuff, but if you've got any questions, please do. There's a mic at the front. Really, really happy to have a discussion. Or we can move on to the real acts coming up next.
So we're made to feel guilty for who we are, basically.
We're made to feel guilty for who we are. It's the new original sin. Yeah? Why should we feel? Why should any of us go from childhood into adulthood feeling fundamentally wrong? Isn't that an extreme level of abuse? And it's being perpetrated on us by our own societies, by our own governments. And all we need to do... Here's the thing, by the way. You all heard of the Hegelian dialectic, right? Okay. So all these things that we said, from the nuclear holocaust to AIDS and whatever, that they're all invisible and don't respect borders. Okay? PRS, right? Problem, reaction, solution. Okay? Now, where do the problems come from? There are some real problems in life, right? The wolves have got in. Okay? Right, grab your spear. Okay, real problem, deal with it. The problems that they give us are global problems. They're worldwide problems, right? And they're invisible. And then the solutions that they give us, they also create the solutions. So they create the problems. I put this to you. I didn't create the AIDS threat or the COVID threat or any of these. Zika virus, whatever the fuck that was. You know what I mean? Bird flu, right? I can't even validate that these things exist using my own senses. I'm just taking it on trust because the telly told me, okay? So I didn't create the problems. You didn't create the problems. The problems came from the TV, okay? Now, where did the solutions come from? The TV. And what is the solutions? Well, the solutions is, well, the problem is that you imagine blokes sitting there in pubs going, you know what I think? I think that modern democracies are hopelessly inept at dealing with these global threats to our safety. Yeah? I think what we need is, I don't know, some kind of new world order. A bigger government that can do what needs doing. And do you know what I mean? They create the problems, they create the solutions. But remember, it's PRS. What's the R stand for? Problem, reaction, solution. This is audience participation, right? Anyone been to a pantomime?
Yes.
Oh, no, you haven't? Yeah, there you go. That's exactly what we're talking about. Audience participation part. They create the problem, they create the solution. What do we have to do? We have to react. What are we reacting to? The problem that they've told us exists, right? And what is the reaction that they want? They want us to get on our knees and go, please, Uncle Klaus, please, Uncle Bill, Come and save us from this thing. We demand digital ID. We demand ultra low emission zones. We demand, do you know what I mean? Protect us from this thing. You know, pour more public money into vaccine development and etc. etc. That is what we have to. But why? Why? Why is it PRS? Why isn't it just PS? Why don't they just say, oh, here's a problem and here's the solution, we're implementing it? Because they can't. And why can't they? They can't because they don't have the power. They don't have the power because they are a tiny, tiny minority of people who want to exercise control over everybody else, but we are the 99.99%. You may have heard a song last night around that theme, right? We have the power because we are extremely powerful, divine beings, right? With an awful lot of spiritual energy. Yeah? So if we don't react the way that they want us to react, they can't say, oh, come on then, here's the solution. You know, here's your new world government, here's your whatever vaccine passports, here's your 15-minute cities. They can't do that. We have to do it to ourselves. It's like the Wizard of Oz. Right? They make you think that this is real. The Scarecrow thought he didn't have a brain. The Tin Man thought he didn't have a heart. The Lion thought he didn't have courage. They actually had these things all along. The Wizard had no power. All the Wizard did was spin illusions to trick people into thinking things. And they have power, but this system that we live in only has power by virtue of the fact that we believe it does. We believe that they have authority because they tell us they have authority, and therefore they have authority. The minute we stop believing it, it's not real anymore. Has anyone seen the movie Labyrinth? When, go back, Sarah. Sarah, at the end, says to Jareth, you have no power over me. And the whole thing disappears, because it was all in her mind all along. But that's the thing. We are powerful, and for that reason, I think we should come out as carnivores and own our biological design because it means a lot more than just health. Good?
Very good.
Thank you.